Light on the wabash, how I long for my Indiana home.
And now for the most famous words in motorsports.
Drivers, start your engine!
Right on the tail of Marco Andretti! Can a teenager win in Indianapolis? Here's the finish. Sam Horton Jr. makes the pass. He'll win it. Sam Horton Jr.
It's not a tour de force. It's a tour de pin.
I don't know what it is. Danny Sullivan gets him. Danny Sullivan gets him down. No, he's swirling. No, he's spinning. Danny Sullivan spins. But he goes around twice and gathers it in.
Absolutely incredible. Danny Sullivan headed for victory lane in Indianapolis.
Our twin checkered flag in the air. It's a battle at the start-finish line. And Joseph Newgarden will win the Indianapolis 500-mile race. Davey Hamilton, he finally gets the buggy off him, but the pass makes it stick. Joseph Newgarden goes back-to-back, wins the 108th running of the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of our brand new podcast that we have just finally revealed called the Indianapolis 500 Podcast, a Borg Warner Production. We welcome you to what is going to be the most exciting, the most excruciating, the most amazing month you will ever experience in your life, where starting in May, the flags are up at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in Indianapolis, Indiana, or specifically Speedway, Indiana, the racing capital of the world, where Americans and international folks are not just coming from Bloomington to just enjoy the little 500, which happened today, and we'll get more to that in a minute, but they are coming here for one reason, and one reason alone, and it's going to be whether you're here for the pole day, the bump day, the carb day. We're not here for that, folks. We're not here for that. I mean, if you are there for that, good for you. But you know what? You're going to be missing out on one of the greatest weekends in all of motor racing history. The Indianapolis 500-mile race, an event that I have watched as a resident from Indiana my entire life. I know everything about it. I have been on the track. I have seen the races. And so have many of you that listen to this podcast. We hope to make this a yearly thing, but we might come out with more episodes from time to time after the race is over. Maybe start an IndyCar podcast of all things. But for right now, we're going to talk about the Indianapolis 500. Well, guess what, folks? That's the most exciting words in sports are not saying welcome to the Indy 500. It's gentlemen, start your engines. And that's what we're going to do on this podcast. So let's start our engines, folks. And let's get into some talk about the Indianapolis 500, the most exciting, exhilarating event on planet Earth. If you haven't been to the Indy 500, I would highly recommend it. It is one of the most exciting times of your life. You will experience things that only you and maybe your family will remember for the rest of your life, regardless of if the race is one car ahead of everyone else by lap 199, or a big crash happened on lap 160, or a horrible accident happened on lap 90, or a winner that you thought was going to win the race did not win the race. This is the most extraordinary period of racing. Anything can happen. 2011, Dan Wheldon, and more on him throughout the rest of these episodes. We will have a whole individual podcast episode about Dan Wheldon actually coming up during this race. So be prepared for that. It's 20 years since the most exhilarating finish and in Indianapolis 500 history. And then next year is when Marco Andretti should have won the Indianapolis 500. But those are for another day. So let's get started and start our engines with talking about the Indianapolis 500 test runs. But we begin our episode by talking about this year's 2025 Little 500 that took place in Bloomington, Indiana, where Black Key Bulls has just won back-to-back Little 500s. And I get that this is an Indianapolis 500 podcast, but that's the big story going into the week, as we will address more of that, especially in this episode, as we will also talk about test runs. But Black Key Bulls has just won their second Little 500, and they are the first back-to-back champions to do this in a while. They finished with a time of 2 minutes, 08.056 seconds. So that is the overall time that they won. And not only was that a good finish, I mean, they led the pack. It was more like in this year's Indianapolis 500 or last year's Indianapolis 500, where, of course, you had a car on the lead lap for several miles with Pato O'Ward leading. And then as soon as they made that turn, or with probably about 10 laps to go, was all Black Key Bulls from there, all Joseph Newgarden in Indy 500 terms. But in second place to them, we have to give a shout out to Sigma Alpha Epsilon, SAE, finished in second. The Cutters finished in third. If you don't know who the Cutters are, I recommend watching the movie Breaking Away. Breaking Away is a tremendous film, and it does talk a lot about the Little 500. That does prepare us for Indy 500 weekend. But yes, the Cutters are a historic team based on the movie Breaking Away, which won an Academy Award for Best Screenplay. So that's why the Little 500 is so famous. And so third place was Cutters, fourth place was Delta Tau Delta, fifth was Sigma Phi Epsilon, sixth was Chi Alpha, seventh was Phi Delta Theta, eighth was Forest Quadrangles. If you go to IU, Forest Quadrangles are a dorm. Ninth are Macro, 10th was Phi Kappa Psi, 11th was Human Wheels, and the remainder of the list is as follows: Sigma Nu at 12, Phi Gamma Delta at 13, 3PH at 14, Alpha Sigma Phi at 15, Cinzano 16, Riley Dance Marathon or IUDM's team 17th. They were 10 laps down. Grey Goat was at 18, Americana at 19, Alpha Kappa Psi at 20, 21 Godspeed, 22 Alpha Kappa Lambda, 23 was Theta Chi, 24 was Bears, simply called Bears, 25 is Sigma Delta Sigma Phi, 26th was CSF, 27 was Novus, 28 was Chi Phi, 29 was Phi Sigma Kappa, 30 was Beta Theta Pi, 31 was Pi Kappa Alpha, 32 was Army, and number 33 was Tau Epsilon Phi. And that rounds out the men's Little 500, the 74th running of the men's Little 500, which just took place this afternoon at 2 p.m. Of course, there were two big crashes that were involved in that race, but like I mentioned in the opener, Black Key Bulls was able to pull away with just one of the easiest finishes. They didn't ram the wall like J.R. Hildebrand did or cause any problems, because there was a lot of lap traffic, especially in that mix, that was helping Black Key Bulls win that race, and it looked clear as day that they were going to win because of the fact that they had just kept the lead lap with 3 laps to go and just was ahead of everyone else. They were literally on turn 4 when everyone else was on turn 2. It was a good race. It was a very good race, to say the least. I would say the Cutters underperformed during this race like they usually do not do. They're usually one of the teams that could compete. But, of course, we have a lot of Bloomington teams that do come out of Little 5 more victorious than in other years. This is a good finish for them, and I'm not saying it isn't a good finish, but as someone that is a townie and a student and a graduate of IU, it is almost nonsensical for me to assume that this is going to probably continue in the near future. And trust me, there is a lot of reasons as to why this victory probably had to happen for Black Key Bulls, as they were not just an incredible team last year, they were too. They brought back a lot of their guys from last year. They had such an impressive team lined up that was completely stacked top to bottom with talent. And they came back and did what the 96-97 Bulls did and repeated a title. So it was a good race overall. A team that I was really surprised by besides Colors was Sigma Alpha Epsilon. How they were able to keep up, especially at spot 2. It was impressive. It was incredible and it was impressive. But, of course, at the end of the day, we have to talk about Black Key Bulls and Sigma Alpha Epsilon as being two of the best teams in that entire field. You could tell the experience worked in the favor of the Bulls and Epsilon, which SAE, of course, being famous for fraternity hazing, this is an amazing victory for them because they haven't placed this high in a really long time. And so, another team that impressed me, though, was Forest. Forest was a team that was talked about all throughout the months of March and April. And for them to finally win that race in 8th place, to finally get that finish at 8th place, is quite frankly an achievement for them since they are a really young team. And they even said on the broadcast today that they were one of a handful of dorm teams that were running in this race. Of course, Teeter is the most historic in the women's race, while Forest is just, I think they're a really young team. They have a lot of potential, and I have them winning the 2026 Little 500 when I graduate from there officially. So, that is the result. Congratulations to Black Key Bulls. Congratulations on that amazing victory. However, everybody needs to really clap their hands for the women's race. My goodness, what a race that was on Friday afternoon when the rain was pouring in Indiana and test trials had just stopped over at the Motor Speedway. And let me just tell you something right now. Kappa Alpha Theta ran the wheels off of their bike. They were incredible during that race. Just incredible. I can't even explain it enough. They were not only one of the best teams in the field, they held on for dear life after crashing on lap 18 of the race, and then they came all the way back just to win back-to-back Little 500s for the women. And speaking of that, let me read you the results here real quick. Friend, that took place on Friday, and there was a lot of rain pouring, but my gosh, I don't know if it was with the traction or what. But Kappa Alpha Theta and Alpha Chi Omega, who finished second on the list on this results, and then Novus and Teeter were just fighting their way to get to the leaderboard. And it was just unbelievable because I haven't seen anything like that in a really long time. The women's races are usually, if nothing else, exciting in itself, but usually they're not the most anticipated race, and this year lived up to all the expectations. It was the best race of the weekend, and as kids are already partying on Kirkwood, they're going to be making their way about an hour north to Indianapolis, and they're going to really celebrate there starting in the month of May. But let's wrap up this Little 500 talk by discussing, like I mentioned, that was one of the best women's races I've ever seen with results. So as we mentioned, first place was Kappa Alpha Theta, second place was Alpha Chi Omega, third is Novus, the private team. They raced with a time of 1 minute 11.193 seconds. Teeter finished fourth with a time of 1 minute 11.200 seconds. Delta Gamma was fifth with a time of 1 minute 11.209 seconds. Sixth was Sigma Kappa at 1 minute 11.222 seconds. Seventh was Ride On Cycling, which was 1 minute 12.024 seconds. Now, you want to know where that actually came from? You want to know where that came from, all that talk about seconds and all that? I used to work as a announcer for track, so that's kind of that track voice in me discussing scores. I didn't realize that until I was actually reading the scores when I actually noticed it. But the other results don't actually have time, so I'm just going to read them or chronologically from 8 to 33. So, number 8 was WSR, which is a private racing team. Number 9 was Chi Alpha, and they were 1 lap down. 10 was Kappa Kappa Gamma. 11 was Malazina Cycling. 12 was Kappa Delta. 13 was Alpha Delta Phi. 14 was Gamma Phi Beta. 15 was Delta Zeta. 16 was Phi Mu. 17 was Alpha Omicron Pi. 18 was Sky. Number 19, CSF. 20th is Phi Gamma Nu. 21 is Alpha Fasta Bica. 22 is Charge. 23 was Collins Dormitory. 24 was Godspeed. 25 was Bison. 26 was Chi Omega. 25 was Bison. 26 was Chi Omega. 27 was Delta Phi Epsilon. 28 was Alpha Gamma Delta. 29 was Mizcala. 30 was Pi Delta Phi. 31 was Zeta 2 Alpha. Sigma Delta 2A is at 32. And no, I didn't go Hawk 2A on that one. And number 33, wrapping up the list, was Alpha Xi Delta. So congratulations to the men's and women's Little 500 winners. They were presented with the Borg Warner Trophy, which of course made its way as a replica to the actual Little 500, and will now be traveling to Indianapolis Motor Speedway. As coming up next, we will be talking about what the heck is happening at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway with 29 days left before the race actually begins very soon. We will be right back right after this promo.
And 2024, Joseph Newgarden was in second place behind the leader Pato O'Ward when headed into turn number 3. Joseph Newgarden did the impossible by passing O'Ward on the final lap to win his second Indianapolis 500.
Hot O'Ward snaking around trying to irritate that air. Newgarden to the outside. Newgarden side by side has taken the lead in the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Pato O'Ward makes a run, but he will not catch it. Joseph Newgarden goes back to back.
For more news and information about the 109th running of the Indianapolis 500, listen to the On the Edge Indy 500 podcast, sponsored by OnTheEdge.com.
And welcome back, everyone, to this podcast, the Indianapolis 500 podcast, the Borg Warner Production. This is your host, Braydyn Bear-Lents, as we welcome you to an incredible weekend of what will be the greatest weekend in all of motorsports. As not only this is going to be exciting, this whole process is going to be exciting as well. So, now I want to keep you guys in mind that next Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, there will be no podcast. Or Wednesday, there will be no podcast. So Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, no podcast. But Thursday, after the Indianapolis, as the month of May rolls, we will have some pre-recorded episodes coming up for you guys. But other than that, we're not going to have a lot of original content because of finals week. So we're going to possibly promote a bunch of promos, actually get some guests on, do some context, that sort of stuff, and get you ready for the Indianapolis 500 with about 29 days left to go. Time is at the essence, but I will tell you that there will be no recorded episodes, but there will be episodes featuring certain things from the Indianapolis 500 throughout the week, including, if I am able to, a lot of features going into the month of May. So this podcast will be on here and will be live throughout the little Indianapolis 500 weekend. But yeah, let's get talking about the test runs. They were pretty nice. I thought they were a good warm-up as the IndyCar series is headed to one of their first real races before the Indy 500. Of course, they have the actual race itself on May 25th. Yep, May 25th. And not only is that going to be, May 25th. And so not only is that going to be something where it's going to be somewhat exciting, it's going to be nice. But yeah, going into May 10th, however, we're going to have the road course race, all of which is going to be on Fox. And then May 10th is a huge road course. Then after that's like pole day, bump day, all that. But first, there's 2 stops for the IndyCar series. The first stop is on April 13th, which had just happened actually recently, and that's going to be streets of Long Beach. But their first stop after that is going to be the Barber Motorsports Park, where they're going to be racing at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. And then May 10th will be the road course race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and the 25th will be the 109th running of the Indianapolis 500. So that is nice in itself. That's beyond nice in itself. And I really do enjoy this month a lot. But, of course, the test runs were interesting. Of course, Kyle Larson wrecked. Who would have thought that? I think he's going to have a very unlucky Indianapolis 500 this year. I do not think it's legible for me to assume that I think Kyle Larson, he was kind of disappointing last year. He won't be as disappointing this year. Of course, his car was running on the test. There were 2 crashes throughout that whole test session, which was interesting. I thought Takuma Sato ran some of the best times. Of course, Marco Andretti was making an appearance again. If he wins, now it's kind of like this with Marco Andretti. And I'll get into an Andretti episode very soon as well on The Edge and ontheedge.com. We got some race results from the Little 500 we're about to post tonight. So keep in mind that a lot of our content is going to be based on ontheedge.com. And, of course, you can follow me on all socials. It's going to be at Indian Tribe. I will change it to Edge On or something like that. But more on that in a bit. But anyways, I was saying that Kyle Larson's car completely wrecked at one point, and it looked so sloppy. If you actually look at his driving, it looked so sloppy that it just looked like one of those mini cars you'd race on the ground where it just hitting in the walls, it was hitting on the sides of the walls, and it just completely wrecked right before the 500 began. And how's this big? Well, he might be going for the sweep again, where he's just going to go for the Indianapolis 500 win and possibly a run at the Coke 600 later on that night, which if he's done it last year, he didn't get the chance to do it last year, which, of course, that was because the race had all that rain and it was pure chaos and we just couldn't deal with a lot of that, but it was just bad. That whole 500 leading up to actual race was actually really bad. But this year, other than that, we have had some amazing finishes. I mean, amazing. It's been awesome. But I'm just saying, it's nice to see that Kyle Larson and all these drivers race again. But I just don't think Larson's going to have one of the best seasons for the 500 this year. Simply put, I don't think he'll do good at all this year. He might win, of course, but his car didn't look great, and it kept sliding a lot, had no traction whatsoever. Can't fully blame that on the track. But I don't think Larson is fit. I think he's fit enough to race in this race. He's been waiting all of his life to possibly win it. But I just don't think after seeing how his car's doing, and of course the fact that he's got to go from there and to the Coke 600, it's going to be a real problem for the people that are dealing with him, especially the ones in the troop shop, especially. That car needs to improve. And it's kind of laughable to see Kyle Larson get wrecked on test trial day at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Some other memorable stuff. We did see Joseph Newgarden, who, of course, is the defending Indianapolis 500 champion. He not only is a great driver, he might go back to back for the first time in Indianapolis 500 history. I mean, that's never happened before. But, of course, you've seen how things have gone in sports this year, especially given where you think you're going to win back-to-back titles. Scotty Scheffler thought he was going to win back-to-back titles in the Masters. He didn't do it. The Houston Cougars thought that they were going to win another national title, making it to back-to-back Final Fours. Didn't do it. So of course, it's a scenario where people are really just hoping that somebody other than Joseph Newgarden will win the race this year. His test run was good. I felt like Penske is a strong team. They're really strong year after year. And, of course, these test trial runs mean nothing to them because they're ready for the month of May. Everybody is ready for May. And the May jitters will get to people. Like possibly Kyle Larson, if his car is not improved now, it's pretty laughable that a driver in NASCAR is also racing an IndyCar and not performing to the best level. Of course, pole day and bump day are huge for people like him because if they don't have that, what are they going to do? What are they going to say? It's just a matter of, let's just see how not embarrassing it would be to have our car function before May. And they did a poor job at that, as all I'm saying, during this Indianapolis 500 test trial run. And, of course, that means absolutely nothing to the fans like me who have been watching motorsports for many, many years. And, of course, it means a lot more to just have a driver come in with experience. And Kyle Larson has that. But I just don't think he's going to do that well this year. Takuma Sato, on the other hand, I think is going to do great this year. His car looked the finest tuned car out of the bunch. He is a great driver, and I think he's won 2 Indianapolis 500s, including in COVID-shortened 2020. So, of course, that was a weird year. But Takuma was a great driver. Takuma's a great driver, and I will say, he had a fine car during that time. Same with Andretti, who impressed me. Because can this be the year that the Andrettis can do it? That we'll have to wait and see. And now we'll switch to our final segment of the night, which is the Indianapolis 500. And that is the predictions part of our episodes, the Indianapolis 500 predictions. This year, if I had to just make an assumption, being today, April 26th, around 10:57 at night, if I had to make a guess today on who will win the Indianapolis 500-mile race, my eyes this year are looking towards Pato O'Ward to win it all. He's missed the last 2 years. It's 20 years since Dan Weldon retired or raced in the Indy 500 and won. Of course, he didn't retire. That was my bad. But he, of course, was racing extremely well that year in 05. He won the championship with about 2 races left. I mean, it was just an incredible run. That year was not only Dan Weldon's best year, it was his last really good year besides 2006 and 2007. Then after that was drama-filled until his passing, which was very, very, very tragic. But all of which is leading up to Pato O'Ward. Of course, he's a driver that's waited 2 years to win the Indy 500. Dan Weldon also raced in the Indy 500 his last 2 years, 2009, 2010, and 2011, eventually winning in 11. But before he won in 2011, just by sheer luck, because J.R. Hildebrand slams the wall, is that Dan Weldon had finished second twice in the Indy 500 in 2009 and 2010. 2011 was the year he finally won. Will this be the year that Pato O'Ward will get it done? He's waited 2 years to win this race. He's got a PTSD of what Joseph Newgarden did to him the last 2 years. Same with Marcus Ericsson. He also has PTSD from what happened in the last 2 years. So it's up to many people to assume that I think this year will be Pato O'Ward's year. But if the Penske cars just run great on that asphalt in Indianapolis, I'm just saying this could be a sight to behold. Helio could win his 6th. That's a heavy pick. I pick every year that Helio's going to win. That's just my pick. That's my assumption year after year after year. But I think this year is going to be a little different. I think it's Pato's year. I think it's his time to shine. And not only is this win going to help out his country, it will really help him out. He will be the first to do it out of Mexico for the first time in Indy 500 history. And I think he can make a lot of history, especially with the fact that he's a foreign driver, and many of them have won the 500 before, but not into the shape that he has been in a long time. Of course, we mentioned Dan Weldon. He was from Greg Great Britain. Wouldn't this be nice if 20 years later he actually won the Indy 500? But another prediction I also have is if Catherine Legg decides to race in this year's 500, I do assume that she might win it all, win the fans over, win it all with the fans, and she will do a great job. I think she was a good driver last year, but then wrecked. But if she can lead at least one lap, it would be like a tribute to Danica Patrick. But I don't see that really happening. It's just a hypothetical guess. But Catherine Legg winning the 500 to me would just be a stretch. But no woman has ever done. And I think especially Pato O'Ward's one of the best drivers this year. If Joseph Newgarden goes back to back to back, that would be incredible. That's never happened before. I don't even think AJ Foyt and Al Unser have ever done that before, so it's going to be absolutely incredible. And of course, the 500 is full of its ups and downs and lefts and rights. The 500 is a humongous tradition that comes to Indiana only once a year. And not only is this an exciting time for race fans like me, it's time to really think about who we're going to pick for the 500 this year, just like the NCAA tournament and just like Christmas. It comes once a year and then we don't experience it again. And so we see the racing go on for the rest of the season, but we don't see enough of the 500 people come back until the very next year. And so I think 2026 would be a good time for me and my family to actually enjoy the Indianapolis 500. So I do legitimately think that hopefully we can try to see going, but of course that's confidential and I won't reveal much of that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to the first true episode of the Indianapolis 500 podcast. And we thank our sponsors over at Amazon Music. Thousands of people watch and listen to music every single day. Whether you're listening to Sabrina Carpenter on your drive to work, or you're listening to Bad Bunny at the club, Spotify, Amazon Music is one of the best places to go to get music. Please use the link down in the description below, as this might be the final time I put this link down in the description to get subscriptions today and help out ontheedge.com get some sponsorships and some money right now, because we are a private news organization that covers anything pop culture, sports, and teen advice, including women's sports and field hockey. And so Amazon Music is the site where you need to go for music, and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts is also on Amazon Music. So enjoy it today and use the promo code down in the description below to help out the channel. Thank you guys so much for listening to this very first episode. Let's get revving, let's get moving, and let's wave our checkered flags as the Indianapolis 500 is finally here, and we are finally going to enjoy it this year in 2025. Have a great day, everyone, and stay blessed. From On the Edge.